Good morning, friends. Welcome back to the live sessions for English subject. I'm Dr. Deepak Mashru from Department of Communication Skills, Marwari University. And today we are going to discuss the remaining part of Reading Comprehension 2. I have given it the number 2 because earlier in the last session we talked about session 1. So what shall we do in this session? Let's start discussion. Even I would like to share a few things because last 2 3 days I started receiving a few queries from the students regarding your submissions for assignments. So let me clarify first that whatever assignments are given to you, you need to follow the deadlines. That is, for assignment number 3 and 4, you need to complete the assignments by 15th of April. And for assignment number 5 and 6, you are supposed to complete by 30th April. You need to write it in the book so that you can have a writing practice. The core purpose of ours is to make you, you know, uh, familiar with what is asked in the exam. So if you do it by writing on the book, it will help you in your final exam. That's why we are going with that mode. If it is required to submit, collect your assignments online, we'll give you instructions to submit your assignments in soft copy. So in that way, you can scan your assignments and submit to us in PDF format. Number one. Number two, you are not supposed to type it. Please understand this. You are not supposed to type this. You are supposed to write it. So it has been instructed to every student at the beginning of the semester to make a fair book of English so that at the end of the semester you can prepare it well. So in that book you can write down the assignments, or else you can write in any book. We are not concerned with that. It should be in written form. You can write on assignment papers, write project papers. You can write in any of the book, but we want assignments to be completed. This is the primary task. Secondary task is we are going to gauge you, we are going to evaluate you based on your assignments, so make sure that you don't copy and paste, right? So if you do that, in that case there can be a problem, because we are going to evaluate each and every assignment minutely, as we have we are going to give you marks on that. So make sure that you write on your own and do not copy from any of the sources. That's the basic thing, right? Okay, so let's start with this reading comprehension 2. Today, what shall we do is we are going to talk about two things, right? Number one, strategies for reading comprehension and types of questions. Before that, what shall we do is we will recap the previous session, that what we did in the last session, that will complete it for our reference, right? Okay, so we start with the recap of what we did in the previous session. So let's start with that. In the last session, what we did was we started with introduction of reading comprehension, right? So that was introduction to reading comprehension. Okay, so in introduction we talked about that you need the right direction to understand the passage, so you need to identify the understand the purpose of the message. That means if you do not know what is the objective of reading, in that way it is good for nothing. That's why it is very a basic thing, fundamental thing, that you should know that why you are doing this, right? Okay, that was the first thing. Then I gave you one more example, right? And that imagine that you are encountering an essay or a paragraph where you don't know what is the title, who the author is, where it was published, when it was published. You cannot see the paragraphs before and after, right? Even you don't have enough time to read it fully, right? The content is very dense. That means it is too much, right? In terms of number of words and length. it can be boring because you cannot expect the essay topic or paragraph of your choice, of your liking, right? What you know. So there are possibilities there, right? It is full of jargons, that is technical words, right? So thing is that in all these situations, in that scenario, what to do, right? So let's talk about it. In that way, you need to have a compass. Compass means which can give you a proper direction to go for. Fine. So how that compass works? Compass works in many ways, right? It gives you right direction, but how to find out right direction in this way? So let's talk about it. We say that to have a compass, right? We need to have the clarity about reading for a purpose. That means the passages are often going to be purposefully jargon intensive, distraction filled, and dense, right? So thing is that instead of memorizing or going through it, right? You can do one thing, that if you understand that okay, in which direction you should go, right? In that way, it will help you instead of memorizing and getting bogged down into the time and words. So you start calculating words per minute and your speed and all. That will not help you unless and until you understand the core purpose, why you are reading and why the author has written this paragraph. So these two things are very important. You need to understand this, right? It looks little bit difficult. It is the common problem across the world, right? Wherever English is there, in the testing mode, any of the modes, any of the exams, right, where there is a reading comprehension, students face problem because we are not good readers, and that's the problem, right? So we need to find out, we need to be acquainted with good reading, we need to be eclectic reader, right? We need to have basic knowledge about all the areas that will help us, right? Okay. Now then I mentioned that to find out the purpose of the reading, you need to understand know what can be done. So what you can do is you can classify the passage, right? Whether it is science based, whether it is historical based, whether it is business based, right? So once you find out that what essay is about or what the paragraph is about, you can have a little background based on your idea, based on your understanding, based on your knowledge till date, what you have acquired from different sources, that can help you, right? So that is the important thing. After that, you can divide that paragraph into four parts. That means you can apply four different steps. Step number one, you break down each part of the passage. That means you can find out that okay, this paragraph has these five portions or six portions or four portions which can be divided, right? So you can you can divide into different clusters, right? It can be a line, it can be a group of lines, it can be a small paragraph, it can be a full paragraph, right? So in that way you segregate it, right? You divide it, right? You look at the first image, this image, so that you will come to know that what I'm trying to tell you. So this is the one, right? So you can divide into clusters, that will help you. After doing this, what you need to do is you try to connect it, right? For example, this is your one paragraph, right? In that way, this paragraph is connected here, and then another paragraph is connected to this one. Whereas this paragraph, is connected with this, and this second paragraph has two different connections. So this is the way you can find out the organization, the structure of the paragraph. That will help you, right? So in that way, what will happen, that you are going to make a kind of mind map of the paragraph. Mind map will be, or maybe a common keyword that you might have come across when you look at it, any of the website or any book where there are given strategies for reading comprehension, right? So here, organize, see, the organization means you create a kind of, or you identify the kind of organization or structure of the paragraph, how it progresses. If you remember, if you can recall what I taught, what I discussed in the previous sessions, right, about writing a paragraph, that you have a thesis statement, then you have, based on thesis statement, you have reason one, reason two, reason three, and you start developing it, right? So consider this as a thesis statement and the reason one explanation, reason two explanation. So in that way, you can understand it, right? Now, the next portion is finding a big data. Finding a big data means what? That means every paragraph has a purpose, right? Every writer has a purpose, right? We write for a purpose, so we read for a purpose. So what we need to do is, while reading for a purpose, we find out that what is the big idea, what is the reason why author has written so much, right? So I told you that if you want to find out the author's purpose, you can identify or you can hunt for two places. Number one, either you look at the first paragraph or you look at the concluding paragraph, right? These are the two places generally one can find out why the big idea of the paragraph, right? And then you go through the author's purpose, right? So once you find out the big idea, it will be easy for you to understand, right, what is the purpose of the author, right? And mind it that this is a very common type of question which is asked in exam, right? If you look at it, any of the reading paragraph, reading comprehension passages, what is the author's purpose, right? What author infers, right? Or what is the idea of authors, writing this? So these kind of questions will definitely be there in the exam. So it is good for us to understand this, right? Okay. Now, reading for understanding, finding the big idea of the passage. As I explained that, we need to find out the big idea. If you find out the big idea, that will definitely help you, right? That will definitely help you to understand that what exactly the paragraph is, about, or what is the core purpose of the author to write about this paragraph. So that will help you in that way, right? Okay. Now, in the last of the session, right, in the last, I explained about what is the fact and opinion, right? There are fact-based questions, there are opinion-based questions, right? So when we talk about the difference between fact and opinion, I explained you in the last session also, right? To identify, to distinguish, to differentiate between fact and opinion, right, is very simple if you look at it, right? See, one thing is clear, that fact is something, which can be tested. I don't tell you that fact is always right. Fact can be wrong too, right? But fact can be tested. Opinion cannot be, right? I give you example. For example, when you say that I enjoy this season, now, this is your opinion. You cannot prove it. You cannot be tested, right? There are no parameters to test it. I'm feeling good. So I'm feeling good, right? So it cannot be tested. I have headache. I cannot test it, but I have a fever. I can go for it. I'm giving you an example to understand that headache cannot be tested, but fever can be tested because you can go and check out the temperature of the body and you can find it out. So here you need to clearly understand that fact is something which can be tested. For example, if I say that there are 25 students in the class, that means I can go and check it out. I can count on my finger whether there are 25 students or not. But if I say that students enjoy my session, it can be right, it can be wrong, right? But it cannot be tested. Getting my point? So this is very important thing, necessary thing for you people to understand the difference between fact and opinion. That based on that, you will get to know about questions, right? For example, what author infers. So here we need to talk about opinions. We need to talk about what is author's opinion about the passage or the topic given in the passage, right? Here we do not touch upon any facts. Fine, okay. Later on, when we talk about fact-based questions, I'm going to talk about strategies to opt that kind of questions too. Okay, now we come to the point, right? Types of questions, right? These were the types of questions we discussed that I'm going to talk in the next session, right? Okay, so here we will start today with main idea or central idea questions. We'll talk about tone or attitude. We'll talk about fact-based questions. We'll talk about inference-based questions, and we'll talk about vocabulary-based questions, right? So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 basic types, right? Generally, which are there in any of the reading comprehension passages. If you refer to any of the websites or book, right, or material, you will find these question types in every reading comprehension, especially when it is for overseas education, when it is for competitive exams, right? Okay, here in GTU, most probably you will be asked MCQ based questions. So in that detail, you will not be asked. But as I told you in the last session, that my core purpose is to make you prepare for all the exams, or wherever a reading comprehension is asked, you should be in capacity to solve it perfectly or competitively, right? That's the reason we are going in detail about it, because this is very important thing, right? Okay, so we start with the today's session, strategies for reading comprehension. You look at this diagram, right? On one axis it is given complex language and simple language. On the other axis it is given, one viewpoint and many viewpoints, right? In the area of the graph, it shows easier and harder. Yeah, look at it and tell me, right, what it is about. Fine. Now here, if I talk about language wise, in that way, there are paragraphs, there are passages which are generally, based on language choices. For example, if the given paragraph has used simple language, right? In that case, it will be easier for you, right? That means if there are less jargons used, if there are less multiple structures used, right? If the vocabulary is simple, right? In that way, it would be easier for you, right? Simple language. If the language is complex, in that way, if you are not acquainted with the language, it would be harder for you. So from language point of view, right, if it is simple language, it can be easier for you. If it is complex language, that is difficult for you. Now I tell you that there is no fixed parameter to identify simple and complex language minded, right? You understand very clearly, right? Put it there in your, in your mind very clearly, right? That simple and complex language, right, they are distinguished based on your understanding or your proficiency of that language, right? For example, whatever is complex for somebody can be simple for me. Whatever is simple for me can be complex for somebody. So it is one to one, it is for individual thing, right? Okay, so let's talk about it now. One viewpoint and many viewpoints, right? You must have, come across that, people say that you should develop reading habits, you should read books, right? So what is the reason for that? I was, while I was searching for this reading comprehension, I was, preparing this session, I came across different websites and different books and materials. I could come to know that on an average, human being reads somewhere around four books. Four, one, two, three, four. Four books in a year, right? I'm not talking about academic books. I'm talking about other than that, right? And the people who rule the world, please understand, the people who rule the world, the entrepreneurs, CEOs, right? They read four books in a month. They read four books in a month, right? So thing is that they have a knowledge, that buffet, right? Their basket, their library, their mindset of reading, right, of the different books. So they have lots of different knowledges. Here I'm talking about this thing. They have many viewpoints, because the person who writes a book, right, that person will have given the crux, the gist of his or her knowledge. It can be the, hard work of 10 years, 5 years, 10, 15 years, right? That he has come put into the form of a book, right? That you read the book and you get that. Now you understand that if you have not read well, in that case, you will have only one viewpoint, right? In that way, it will be difficult for you. But if you have many viewpoints, right, it would be easier for you, right, to understand. Getting my point? Now we flip it for the thing, right? For example, if Uh, I'm getting one comment that I need to give you example of complex language. Yeah, complex language means when there are examples, for example, simple sentences, complex sentences, and compound sentences. What Vidi madam taught in the last class. So when there is a collaboration of all the languages together, in that way it goes for that, right? I'm going to give you a worksheet. In that worksheet, you will find that, for example, Marie Curie. You must have heard the name of that person, right? She was a scientist, and so if a passage is asked on Marie Curie, right? If you are a good reader, you will be able to understand that, and you will be able to write, because it is easy for you, because you belong to that genre, right? You belong to that category. But if a question is asked about business, fine. So business is something that you never thought of. You are from engineering background, right? And business is something related to commerce. So in that way, it will be difficult for you. I'm talking about that thing, right? The complex language, right? Okay. See, second thing, complexity in terms of grammar, in terms of words. Fine, it can be there. For example, if I give you example of that, there was a heavy rain, right? And there was a torrential rain. The words which are used, that makes the language complex, right? The level of education has been found decreasing. The level of education has been found deteriorating, right? So in that way, the words which we are using, that make the language simple and complex, right? If you want to understand or have more examples of complex language, you can go to YouTube and find out any speech of Sachi Tharoor, and you will get it. Jokes apart, but he is the person uses complex language. He has different types of words, that you need to refer textually, right? And there are people who use simple language, getting in that way. Now we were talking about one viewpoint and many viewpoints about a reader. Now for author, right, the person who writes this paragraph, in that way, what happens that if in one passage they have given, or the author has given only one viewpoint, that means I talk about this point and examples, supporting arguments, right, undermining arguments, conclusion. In that way, it would be easy for me to understand. Why? Because I'm going to talk about only one category. All right. Now, thing is that there are multiple viewpoints. That means I author talk about one point, second point, third point, fourth point, right? In that way, the paragraph goes on, right? Transmitting, transferring, or transition, takes place from one place to another one, right? So here, that's a problem. Fine. So in that way, it becomes difficult for the reader to understand different viewpoints. So whatever is there given in the paragraph, it has got less viewpoints or one viewpoint, is easy to understand. And second thing, and if you talk about many viewpoints, that means the things are given in different forms, that creates a problem. I think you understand now, right? Okay. Now uh, before we go for the strategies, let me explain that what we did in the paragraph writing, right? I explained that the layout of paragraph. Now what we did was we divided our paragraph, our essay writing, in three different paragraphs. It was first paragraph, right? It was first paragraph, okay, then it was second paragraph, and then third paragraph. Okay, what was there in the first paragraph? A hook, background information, thesis statement. This is something what I'm going to talk about, right? Okay, so here background information is something that we copy from the topic, right? Hook is a quotation, quotable quotation, or any catchy caption, or any catchy word or a phrase or a sentence, right? Okay. Now, so here the author talks about thesis statement. That means in paragraph writing we write what is our stand, and with reason. And here we have a recap of the statement. That means what I explained earlier was that either the main idea or the purpose of the author's writing this paragraph can be found in the first paragraph, or it can be found in the third paragraph, that is last paragraph, right? This is the reason. Now you understood that, right? Okay, because here whatever we write has got the repetition, right? Okay, that's the reason, right? Okay, so this is a common structure that everybody follows. It is not compulsory to follow this, but there are things. Fine, there are people who scientifically write, or they write in a very structured form. They follow this kind of thing, right? Not necessarily there should be always three paragraphs. There can be two paragraphs too. Fine. Okay. So I guess you understand this, right? If you understood up to now, please say yes, right, in the comment so that I can understand this, right? You can exceed paragraphs, no problem, right? There can be three paragraphs, four paragraphs, or a paragraph and writing has no connection, right? It is for your understanding. It is for your understanding. If you want to segregate it in the various paragraphs, you can go for it. Fine. It has nothing to do with that. But make sure that the transition of one paragraph to another paragraph is properly done, so that there should be connectivity, rather logical connectivity between one and second paragraph, second and third paragraph, like this. Fine. If you understand up to this, please write yes in your comment box so that I can go further. Yeah, that means there are few people online. Where are the other people going? Okay, great. Fine. So I go ahead now. Strategies for reading comprehension, right? Okay. Now let's go for the first strategy. I understood now. If you don't write yes, it's okay. We are moving further, right? Okay. Now the first strategy says that reread the text, right? The most common problem which has been found in Indian students, rather Gujarati students, right? Based on my experience of teaching Gujarati students for more than 2 decades, I could find that the students here, they face the problem of regression. What is regression? Regression means you read the first line, you reach to the second line, and you forget the first line. That means the span of your eyes, the span of your reading is very limited. You read word by word, you read spelling by spelling. That's why you read phrase by phrase. In that way, what happens that it becomes difficult for you to store in your mind in a RAM. Computer people understand that it is stored in the RAM, right? Short-term memory, right? It is difficult. So here, the more practice helps you. I tell you that if you want to score good marks in any of the competitive exams to opt reading comprehension, you should have at least 400 words per minute capacity. That means you should be able to read 400 words per minute. The thing is that it does not mean that you go through it, right? Reading does not mean that the words come before, right? Come before your eyes, right? It is about understanding too. Fine. So here it has been mentioned that more information is equal to more understanding, right? That means if you have more knowledge about all the areas, it depends on your, yeah, Chandan and Ankit has certain problem, memory loss, and Chandan Kumar says no. You can text me or inbox me on WhatsApp, at the end of the class. I'll explain you your difficulties, right? Don't worry. You will get your doubts solved easily, right? Don't worry, I promise you. Okay. Now, reread the text. That means the more you read, the more you understand, right? So here we need to be very clear that we have led lot of background knowledge or lot of knowledge about things. That means your reading should be powerful, right? That will help you. Number one, I'm talking in general, right, in a very generic way. Number two, to be very specific for one passage, right? I tell you that the more information is equal to more understanding. That means you read the paragraph once, twice, thrice. It is possible that you need to read the paragraph for multiple times, right? It is difficult, time taking, but still you need to do it. Fine. So if you read more, you will be able to understand, you will be able to find out what has been written between the lines, right? That will help you. Fine. Okay. Now, second strategy is activate your prior knowledge. That means whatever you know already about this, right? So you need to, for example, if you come across uh, a topic which is related to engineering drawing, for example, fine. So it is about drawing and it's about engineering drawing. Now, whatever you know till date about engineering drawing, you can deploy this. You can use that. You can activate that, right? For example, a paragraph has been asked based on one story. That story you had studied in ninth standard when you were in the ninth standard, so you activate that knowledge and you get to it. Fine. So what you need to do is, if you have a background knowledge, if you are an eclectic reader, if you read something in your past, it will definitely help you. Fine. Okay. So here we need to be very clear and careful about activating our knowledge, right? So you activate your knowledge with reference to what the passage has been asked. You need to apply your brain. And I tell you that I have seen hundreds of examples where students do not need to read the options. Without reading the options, they can answer the questions, right? Because they know about the topic. So it's easy for us, right? So this is what second strategy talks about. Now, strategy number two, three says that use context clues, right? This is, I used here, uh, context clues means what? So here we need to find out, right, by uh, looking at the connectives. Yes, I'm talking about cohesive devices. Fine. For example, if you find though, although, even though, but, yet, still, right, in between two sentences, that means two sentences talks about contradictory things, right? If it is given there in between two sentences and or and then along with not only but also in addition to further, right? In that way, we understand, okay, it is in that continuation, right? So you need to find out such kind of clues. It is not necessary that every time you are in that capacity to understand, right, or you get to know about all the topics which has been asked in an exam or paragraph you come across, right? You don't have that, but you technically you can try to solve it this way. You can find out, right, by words or by spellings, if your vocabulary is good, you will find out the words, right, and you will get to know that, okay, these kind of words are used in such kind of profession or such kind of domain. So in that way it will help you, right? So in that way you find out contact use. Yeah, Harshit, in that way, see, I told you that if you do not have background knowledge in that way, you are simply gambling in reading comprehension, right? As I told you, the reading comprehension is not like a grammar, right? It's application of your knowledge, right? It is not like tenses that is applicable across all the topics, all the sentences, right? Whatever you come across, right? Whether we pick up the exercise from Times of India, Indian Express, or literature book, or in any other reference book from your domain, right? The rule of tenses remain same. But here I tell you that in reading comprehension, it is about application of your knowledge, right? If you don't know about linguistic in that way, you simply need to gamble for it. That's why I'm telling you that instead of waiting for, right, such kind of topic, it is easy, right? It is advisable that you start reading, right? In library, we have a series of 120 books by Oxford publication. The series name is A Very Short Introduction to, and I tell you that it is half size of A4 pages, half size of A4 pages, and no book is more lengthier or has more pages than 100 pages, right? That means it is hardly of 25 pages. That means one book you can read, you can complete it within 20, within 1 day or 2 days. Fine. So if you wish, even I can share a soft copy of those books. Now you understand that it has been published by Oxford publication, right? So in that way, what will happen that it has got all authenticated, authorized information. Wikipedia you can find about it, but here it is given in such way, right? So if you are a digital reader, I'll provide you the links where you can download all these 120 books and you can get to know about it, right? By going through it, you can have basic knowledge about it, and that you can definitely go for it. See, we Indian people are very good at doing jugaad. You understand the word jugaad, right? And specifically when it comes to engineering, right? You people are master in that, right? Nobody can beat you in the world, right? So here you can go for it. But to start with, you can definitely think about this kind of eclectic reading, right? So I suggest you that you go for a very short introduction to series by Oxford publication, right? You go to PDF Drive, you go to Google it, and you will get to know, and you can download all the books or whatever books you wish to. Fine. Yeah, we will stick to the questions related to reading comprehension, right, Rishabh? So whatever questions you have other than reading comprehension, we can then address to it in the other things, right? Okay. Now, strategy number 4 talks about infer meaning, right? Infer meaning is read between two lines, right? You must have heard or you must have seen that there are certain times where your father talks to your mom and whatever it is said, right? It is understood by your mom, and whatever is not said by your dad is also understood by your mom, right? It goes in reverse too, right? When your mom looks at your dad, your dad understands. Why? Because they understand between the lines. Jokes apart, but here, right, here what we do is we talk about reading, right? So here there are hidden agenda of every author for writing a paragraph. So what is the hidden agenda, right? So there are certain times, we cannot we cannot tell publicly the things. That's why what we do is we try to quote it, we try to cover it, and in that way we try to mention. So we need to find out, we need to dig out rather, right? Those meanings, those items, right? And bring it to surface for understanding. So in that way, it can help us for answering the questions which are inference based questions. Fine. Okay. Now, fifth one is think aloud. It is not about speaking aloud or asking everybody in the class about the answers, right? That means talk through it. That means you ask yourself, right? You ask yourself, you talk to yourself. It's called thinking aloud. Fine. So you talk to yourself that, okay, this is the one, how I can structurize it. If I am the author of the paragraph, I will expand it. How will I'll go for developing this further? Fine. How would I thought of, developing this paragraph? So if you think in that way, that will help you to find out what is the structure of the paragraph. If you find out the structure, this A and B and C in that way, so that will be helpful to you to prepare a mind map of the paragraph. So that will help you to pass through, to go through, right, entire paragraph faster and easier. You summarize the story, right? If you look at the 5 and 6, right, summarize the story is, you find out what are the characters, setting, problem, and solution, right? So you can find out how many characters are there, because there will be differently few questions based on characters, right? What is the problem? There will be questions based on problems, there will be questions based on solution or solutions. Fine. Okay. Now, so if you can segregate it, if you can divide it in different parts, right, that will definitely help you to find out. Fine. So what are the different ways of looking at it? So if you have all the characters ready, selected, right? What you can do is, if it is offline, right, you can have a pen and pen with you, right? You can write. You can go with dotted line for characters. You can write curly line for settings. You can have what we call it broken line, dash 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 for problems, and you can circle out the solution. So in that way, when you look at the paragraph again, right, if you want to look at the solutions, only look at the boxes that you have made or circles you have made, right? If you want to go with the settings, only go through the curly lines, right? So this is what we can go for it. Fine. So setting is something, it talks about the plots. Plots means the way it goes, right? For example, if you look at any drama has a plot, right? Here plot is setting, right? So how it has been brought to the people, right? So the way, the method of putting things, right, before the reader, that art is called setting. Setting is here, plot, or we call it the way or the method of putting the things on the surface. Fine. So this is what we call strategy for summarizing the story. This will help you to go through the story faster, twice, thrice, multiple times if you want to go through it. Instead of reading entire paragraph, you go through this, because whatever important things are there, you have marked it. So it will be easy for you to revisit again and again. Seventh point is look at keywords. Fine. For example, if your cousin brother is getting married, right? So in that way, for before the date of marriage, for last 2 weeks, right? Your cousin would be a buzzing word, marriage would be a buzzing word, right? Because every discussion would be around your cousin, around the marriage of your cousin. Fine. So here what will happen, that everybody will talk about that thing. That means if I find out my cousin and my cousin's marriage, I can find out the other things, right? Because it would be these are the words which will be there discussed various times in that paragraph, right? So here keywords means the words which have been used frequently in the paragraph, that mentions, that demonstrates that here the theme, the area, right, of the paragraph, right, which the author has decided to talk about, to write about, that we can find it out. So it will be easy for us to filter out, right, the type of the paragraph, the journey of the paragraph, the structure of the paragraph, right, the mind map of the paragraph, by locating the keywords. For example, thesis statement. If you locate it in the first paragraph and the last paragraph, it is easy for you to find out what is the purpose of the writing this paragraph, what author intends to say, right, what author is interested to talk about, right? So here, by doing that, by locating keywords, it can help you in that way. Now make predictions. This is very important. Think, pair, share, right? So here, this is a kind of advanced level. This is for advanced level questions. Fine. So there are things, which questions rather, right? You will not be able to find out question, right? You will not be find out. Keywords are not the reserved words. Keywords are the words which are frequently used, right? Or they help you to find out the mind map of the paragraph, right? Okay. So here, prediction means what? We need to understand, you need to guess the things, right? By looking at the sentence, that, okay, this means it would have been in the mind of the author, that's why he must have written like this. So you think, pair and share in that way. So here, for example, I tell you that there are kinds of questions. For example, what is the central idea of the paragraph? This question, if you take it, what is the central idea of the paragraph? Now you read the paragraph 100 times, you will not be able to find out the answer from the paragraph, right? Because it is to be understood by you as a reader, that what it means. So here you will find the answer in form of options in the question, right, with the question. So here we need to predict it sometime, right? So there are advanced level questions or advanced level things, we need to understand in that way. Fine. Okay. Now use word attack strategies. Here vocabulary will help you. For example, somebody asked a question that, sir, if you don't know about the word, about the topic, right, which has been asked in the paragraph, what should we do? At least you know the root words. Fine. For example, you know about which are the prefixes used for negative, making negative words. What are the words used for making, positive words, right? Or making adjectives, making, suffixes and prefixes, right? So if you know this, in that way, you will be also find out You're able to find out that how the paragraph progresses. Fine. So if you don't know the meaning of the word, it's okay. But if the word has been prefix has been written there, right? For example, reading here is given, right? So I don't know what do you mean by reading, for example, hypothetically, right? So I know means again. That means whatever action has been said here, the author says about doing it again. So by understanding the root word re, I understand it is been advised or mentioned to do the things again and again, right? So I understand it, right? So in that way, root words will help you. Root words, we have done the exercise from vocabulary.com. If you have not completed it, you complete it, right? It will help you, right? And if you go for it, for example, you Google it out that root words to make negative words, you will find lots of things there. Fine. Okay. Then visualize it, right? Simply close your eyes, right? You close your eyes and visualize that what author is interested to say. So you can have a mental map. If you can find the picture of the paragraph, that okay, you can visualize it. The way while reading a novel, we can visualize the thing, right? If you can do that, it will be helpful to you like anything. Fine. It's a bit difficult in the beginning, right? If you solve around, 200, 300 reading comprehension paragraphs, after that you can visualize thing. Or if you have read more than 300, 400 books, right? In that way, you can visualize the thing. By reading books and novels, you can visualize things. In same way, you try to visualize it. That will help you to understand the reading comprehension easily. Use graphic organizers. The way I told you that you can use different types of, which is, if it is online, fine, you can use like this different colors, right? If it is offline, you can use different sketch pens or pens, or if you have limited resources, you can use straight line, dotted line, curly line, broken line, whatever you can go to segregate the types of paragraphs. For example, if one in one passage, right, there are four paragraphs. One paragraph is related to the first one, right? That will go with dotted line. Second will go with curly line. Third will go with what we call straight line. So in that way, you can find it out. So in that, by doing it, you can create a mental map easily, right? 12th one is evaluate understanding, right? You try to understand that what exactly the author is interested to say. Fine. So in that way, if you can evaluate it, that will help you to find it out properly. Fine. Right. Now, this is a bonus because there will be mostly MCQ based questions, right? So when we have MCQ based questions, definitely we'll have what we call it. There are four options. We need to select one. Fine. So how to do that? Sometimes it happens that we fail to understand that, sir, I get confusion that whether to go for B or D, whether to go for C or A, like this. So how to go for it? So in that way, I have brought one bonus strategy for you. That is POE. Right? Can anybody tell me what do you mean by POE? If you know the meaning of PO, write in the box, right? You will get the surprise prize from me. If you know the full form of POE, right, you will get the prize from me, right? You need to do it in 10 seconds. You cannot go and search and tell me. Fine. I'm waiting for you. What is the full form of PO? Oh, I know that it's difficult to find it out. Okay, I tell you. A POE stands for process of elimination, right? What do you mean by process of elimination? That means when you are not sure that which option can be there out of four, go reverse. Go reverse, right? Not point of entertain. Harshit, well tried, right? I have observed that you have been very active member. peacock, power of Ethernet. Oh my God. Okay, it's not like that. But thank you very much for answering. Right, I could find that people are still active. Power over Ethernet, point of thing. Okay, fine, no problem. Okay, it is process of elimination, right? Okay. Now, when you are not sure that out of four options, which options can be there, fine, go reverse. You start reverse engineering, right, for which you are master enough, right? You go for it, that which option cannot be there, fine, eliminate that number. That means now probability is 33% out of 25, fine. Then you out of three, you try to find out that okay, which cannot be there, you eliminate that and you go for it, fine. Okay, now how to go for it, how to understand this, I tell you. See, this is a pen. What is new in that? Fine. Okay. I tell you that if you look at this pen, fine, this pen is a paragraph. Now, there are two options given. Option number A and option number B. I'm not sure which option is applicable, which option is important. Right? So what shall I do is I negate it. That means I say this is negative. Right? In that way, I'll check it out whether could there be any impact on the paragraph? No. That means this is not applicable. But if I move this and the pen falls down, that means it affects the paragraph. That means this is important. Fine. So in that way, what you do is when there are two options and you are confused, right? You are in dilemma, which options should be there? You negate it. Negate it means you put it negative, right? If it is, you put it, apply is not, and you try to match with the paragraph, fine. If you find that there is no difference, it does not affect the paragraph, that means that is not the important pillar, right? You must have seen in the temple, right, in the big buildings there are many pillars, right? All the pillars are not important, right? There are certain pillars which have been put there as a fancy, right, to just to give a kind of a good look, right? It has nothing to do with the weight, right? So if it is there or not does not make difference. But if there are things, right, the weight is there on that pillar, if you remove that, the building may collapse. That means if the option is there which is important, right, if it is there in that way, if you move it, right, you will find the affection or effects on the paragraph. In that way that is important for you, right? Okay, now we go with the next one. Okay, types of questions, very quickly we'll go for it, right? Main idea questions. And what do you mean by main idea questions? So they are just like in any of the movie, right? We find the theme, right? The theme-based things, right? So whatever theme is there, in that theme, you will find everything moving around. The way I told you that in the thesis statement, you find that what has been there, the topic, right? And based on that thesis statement or the stand, entire paragraph would be there. The author would have expanded it in that way, right? Okay. So how to go for it? As I mentioned that you look at the first paragraph and the concluding paragraph, right, and go for it. But you need to be very careful, right? If the options are given which are too general and too specific, right? If it is too generic and too specific, you avoid it, right? So in that way, it will be difficult because if it is too general, it would be explanation. If it is too specific, it would be example. Fine. So we need to be very careful about it. It should not be too general. It should not be too specific, right? In that way, you can opt main idea or central idea question. Tone and attitude, second question, right? So here it talks about, right, different emojis you can find, right? That means it talks about different emotions, sentiments. Fine. So author has various sentiments, and because of that sentiment that author has written, right? If the author is inquisitive, he has got question to ask, right? If the author is happy, that's why he's writing. The author is very angry, right? The author is disappointed. The author is in a good mood, right? The author is surprised. right? So what is the thing, right? In that way, what will happen that you Google it out, and you find out that the words related to tone in reading comprehension, and you will find the list of words that if you find such kind of words, that means author is in happy mood, right? If you find that these kind of words, the author is angry. Fine. So in that way, you can touch upon this type of questions. Fine. As I told you that you need to be very, very, you know, clear and should have a big base of vocabulary, right? If your vocabulary is not broaden enough, in that way, that will be a problem. Fine. As I told you that there can be tone can be humorous, sarcastic, right? Cynical, right? That means opposite, contradictory type of thing or harsh. Fine. So it can be any type. So if we can find out words which are related to particular tone, if you remember it, it can help you, right? Because that question can be there in reading comprehension. What is author's tone in the paragraph? What is author's attitude about the paragraph? So unless and until you can identify such kind of words, you cannot answer this question, right? Fact based, right? Such questions require to identify the correct and incorrect facts as per the paragraph, right? So you read the passage and find out that, right? What exactly facts are? As I told you earlier, that facts and opinions. You find out the statements, sentences, right? Information which can be tested. That means those are fact-based sentences, fact-based paragraph, or fact-based information, right? You go for it. Now you find out that why these information has been taken or given by the author, right? So these information, these sentences, right, will be supporting one of the ideas or maybe more ideas of the author which is there in the first paragraph, right? So we need to find out and we need to structureize it. We need to make the organization, right? We need to find out, we need to link these things to the main idea, right? So in that way, it can be helpful to you. Next is inference. The purpose of the inference questions is to check your ability to read between the lines. This is purely a logical question, right? There is no thumb rule for this. It varies from person to person. Fine. Okay. So here what we need to do is we need to understand that what author has said and what author is interested to say and what author has not said, but still it is there in between the things, right? For example, if you read Bhagavad Gita, right? When you read Bhagavad Gita, you will find different interpretation every time. Why? Because it is based on that, how you interpret it. That is important, right? So here, when you read the books, right? You read the poetry, for example. Poetry is the best example for this, right? When you read the poem, right, written by any of the poet, fine. So as per your mood, then you will find that okay, this poem can be written in interpreted in this way also. That is your inference. The poetry remains same, but you're looking at it, your inference is different. So that is important. The answers you can get it from the options, right? Based on the options, you can check it out from the paragraph and you can answer the questions, right? Okay. So you need to correlate the things and you can arrive the correct option in that way. You need to go with POE, right? Last question based is vocabulary based questions. As I told you that vocabulary based questions, that means here in MCQ based questions, GTU, you will find at least 2 questions out of 6 questions, right? Based on vocabulary. That what do you mean by this word? Right, in the passage. So in that way, it is important for you to develop the vocabulary properly, right? That will help you like anything. Fine. If you have a doubt, you can ask me. We are early by 1 minute. It's not necessary that you ask questions right now. If you have a question, you can ask me in the group or you can post me, you can inbox me. Fine, I'll definitely help you out in that way. And yes, I'll also share this, file in all the WhatsApp groups after the class so that it can be helpful to you for your ready reference. Definitely, I'll do that. Nishita, I'm going to upload this right now after the class at the both places in your portal as well as in the WhatsApp group, right? I'll do that. So I hope that this reading comprehension session, second session, was meaningful, fruitful, right? So you must have enjoyed the session, right? In the next class, we are going to talk about precis writing, the last topic that we like to touch upon, right? So till then, thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend, right? The way you enjoy all the days. Stay at your home, stay safe, right? And start preparing for your exam because you will exam from the next week. So I wish you all the best for your exams. Thank you very much.